All right. It looks like everyone has answered the poll, so I'm going to end the poll. Now I'm going to share the results in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so everybody, I'm sure you're just dying to know how did everybody respond. But we'll take a look at the results in just a moment. Okay, but first let's go ahead and go through our agenda. So again, we're going to do our greetings here in just a moment, and then we'll do our new expression for the day. Then our grammar topic, we'll be talking about tricky issues with nouns. So again, if you haven't been here for the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at specific areas of grammar that often cause students confusion. So we've done prepositions, adverbs was last week. This week I decided to concentrate on nouns. So we'll talk more about those and then we'll sign in. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the greetings. So as I said before, we're going to look at the results of the poll and then compare it to the results of a recent survey. And again, this survey was conducted by the Pew Research Center. Now, we used a lot of their information last week in talking about different generations. So we mentioned millennial generation, we mentioned Generation X, and especially how they relate in terms of family. So this week I'm using the Pew Research Center to talk about social media. So I was curious to see how do we as students compare maybe to Americans, and then of course to think about, do you think you represent sort of the typical person from your age group, from your country, whatever. Okay, well let's go ahead and share the results. Okay, so real quickly, as you can see, for question number one, the two most popular were Facebook and YouTube. So let's keep that in mind, and when we look at the other information in just a moment. But I do see that about half of us, almost half, use Instagram. And I notice WhatsApp is a pretty popular one. Now, I think you'll notice that when we look at the American research, I think you'll see it is not nearly as popular as it is for my students. LinkedIn, so this is an interesting website that focuses more on jobs and career. So I know some of you have LinkedIn accounts. In fact, I don't know if anybody in this group, if I'm actually connected to you on LinkedIn, but I am connected to some of my students on LinkedIn. And then Pinterest, I'm connected on Pinterest, but I never use it. So number two, I noticed basically most of us chose several times a day. And then our age group, interestingly enough, we have a couple of different groups represented, but we do have most of our students coming from that millennial group and into the Generation X group, the 30 to 45. So we'll see, again, how that compares to the results. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see the screen. It's a little difficult to see both. So let's go ahead and look at that report. I'm going to bring it up here on the screen. Now, again, this research was done in 2019. So of course, I'm sure some of this information is going to be a little bit out of date. But what's interesting is in the research, they noticed that not much had changed for people in the last year or so. So let's look at this very first chart. So as you can see from the very first chart, the two most popular sites, no surprise, are YouTube and Facebook. And again, quite a few. And in fact, that was pretty much true for our group. We had the majority of them were using these particular platforms. And then if you notice here at the bottom, Instagram, there's Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and so on. Now, I didn't put Twitter on this list. So I'm curious, does anybody actually use Twitter? You can use the microphone or the chat box. Does anybody use Twitter at all?
No. For me, no.
No?
No.
Okay, so
No.
am I hearing?
Is it that
No.
I stopped using that?
Okay. Okay, Tasi?
I am used.
I didn't use it.
Didn't use it. Okay, Brenda, you use it?
Yes, too. Me too. When post the photograph for my daughters
Okay.
school, I pretty use for that only.
Really, for Twitter? Okay, for Twitter. Really? Okay. Well, I don't know. I know a lot of people said that they stopped using Twitter when the president started using Twitter, so that might be a good time to stop anyway. But actually, I put Twitter on in my class yesterday, and I don't think anybody answered that one, so I decided not to put it on the group here. Believe it or not, Kenton ESL has a Twitter account, but I've never used it. So, but anyway, I did want everybody to notice that WhatsApp is very popular in other countries, but definitely not so popular in the United States. So I think if that's a surprise to you, keep in mind most Americans really don't know what WhatsApp is or don't really use it. But again, I think we're not surprised here. YouTube and Facebook, and in fact, I was kind of surprised that YouTube was used more. But and I don't necessarily think of YouTube as social media, but it is. You know, people can communicate through YouTube. So I thought that was kind of surprising. Okay, now let's continue. So don't get sick here, guys. Let's look at the different age groups. So if you notice, looking at the different, if you look at the different platforms here, if you think about our demographic was mostly in that 30 to 40, here it says 49, but in that particular demographic, if you follow the lines here, you will notice that of all the platforms, it looks like YouTube is used by about 90% of the population in that age group. And of course, we almost had 80% or so for our group. But I noticed that Facebook is not as popular as that. Now, again, do most of you, use Facebook a lot? When you put several times a day, do most of you still use Facebook, or do you just kind of check it and then use something else?
I didn't use it, Facebook. I don't have account. I don't have
So
anything.
you haven't used it before?
No,
Oh, okay.
just Instagram. But my daughter, she's 15. She only uses Snapchat, and I don't know.
Snapchat, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I think that's really, if you notice here, Tassi, in the 18 to 24 group,
Yeah.
that has become really popular. But notice we don't have 15 because obviously that's a little young.
Yeah.
For the survey, okay. Yeah, I notice among the younger group, it seems like Snapchat and Instagram are much more popular, but Facebook seems to be not as popular anymore. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think for me, the moment Facebook stopped becoming popular was when my parents joined Facebook. That's when I stopped really using it, right? Is that true for you? Are your parents on
Yep.
Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of when it stopped being cool, is when your parents start using it. Now, I joked with my group yesterday, so I'll share this with the group today. There's one social media platform, if you notice, that's not mentioned on this chart. Can anyone guess what social media platform is not mentioned here? Can you identify which one is not mentioned?
TikTok.
It's TikTok. Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah. So I mentioned this to yesterday's group. So if you were in my class yesterday, don't say anything. But I'll share this funny little moment. So last week I was talking to my 74-year-old father, and my father's he's pretty cool with the technology, Facebook. He knows how to use Facebook a little bit. He's a professor of music, so he uses a lot of technology. But earlier this week or last week, I was talking to my dad, and my dad said that one of his professor colleagues sent him a video from TikTok. And I thought, okay, I almost had a heart attack, because I never thought in my life that I would hear my 74-year-old father mention the words TikTok. So that's my surprise story for the week. So anybody here, does anybody here use TikTok?
Yeah. My daughter loves
My daughter.
all the time.
I think it's the younger group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And particularly, I like it.
So Julie likes TikTok. Okay.
Yeah.
So Julie, do you do lots of dances and stuff on TikTok?
Yeah, I
Yeah?
like it. Yeah, choreography. It's nice.
Well, to me, that's what I think. I think it seems like most people use it just to share dancing, but I think you can do lots of things, right? Cooking and
Yeah. My daughter, she shares sometimes with me some things to clean the oven, these kind of things.
okay,
but-
Natassi, that is really strange, because now you
Yeah.
have kids
So-
sharing cleaning tips with their parents. Okay,
Do you
there's the
see?
world.
It's a little crazy, but that's what I mean. Maybe you can
That's
find a lot of
interesting.
things there. Yeah.
That's
Not just
interesting.
dance.
Can
Yeah.
you imagine when I was a kid? I can't imagine ever talking to my parents about cleaning tips. Okay, yeah, the world has truly gone crazy. Well, anyway, I thought you'd enjoy that. But yeah, as you can see, TikTok's not listed here. So maybe if they did a survey this year, I bet TikTok would be really close to the top of the list. Okay, so as we can see, what's become popular. So anyway, let's take a look at the last piece of information.
But sorry, John.
Yeah?
TikTok at the first time is more choreography, more dancing. But now it's different. You you can learn English because the people put many videos about the weird words you use, the different kind. Now it's different.
Yeah,
Now
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And actually, Julie, when, back in March when we went online, I actually shared a short little TikTok video of talking about how to wash your hands. So they were doing, a lot of people were doing these funny little videos about social distancing, and so even then I kind of knew what TikTok was, but I think you're right. Now it's got all kinds of purposes. So well, let's take a look here at this last chart here. So it mentioned how often we use these platforms. Now, basically everyone here said they would use these platforms several times a day. So again, if you kind of look at our groups here, as you can see, yeah, that's pretty much true of everybody, that basically most people are using it several times a day. Instagram, Facebook. So for you guys, which one do you use the most? So if you chose more than one platform, which one do you use the most?
YouTube.
So YouTube, yeah.
Instagram and YouTube.
Instagram, YouTube, Facebook.
Yeah,
I guess some
me
Facebook.
too.
Okay.
YouTube.
YouTube for me.
For you, okay. And then for the TikTok users, do you visit TikTok several times a day? How does it work?
For example, me, when I have the break, I check.
Okay.
It's
So
my
now-
time. I
now-
eat and check the
So
video.
what do you do? Do you like put what things you're interested in, and then they send you videos of the things you're interested in, or do they just send you like a stream of videos? How does it work?
I think entertainment.
So, but at the beginning, Julie, like when you sign up for an account, do you put like, I'm interested in dancing, I'm interested in cooking?
Yeah, you have to follow them.
Okay, so you have to choose those things. Okay.
Yeah, and then it's
Okay.
like a Instagram feed.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so it's okay, I see. So
Just only videos, not the pictures.
I got you. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be using TikTok, but still, I know my nieces and nephews, they're getting pretty interested in it.
For me, it's more WhatsApp because I communicate with my parents and my family.
Yeah, and so I think, again, if you notice, that's nowhere on this list, and that's because, again, the people they're polling are mostly people from the United States. So yeah, maybe we could say, hey, we got international people here using WhatsApp a lot. So I think you're right. I think in this case, if we put WhatsApp on here, you might use that one a lot. Well, anyway, I thought you guys would be interested in sharing some of this and seeing some research on it. So again, the idea is the Pew Research Center. I'm going to go back to the top here. Again, they have lots of different interesting research, lots of social research. I really find it interesting, and I often like to use it for class to talk about some of these topics. So again, the name of the organization is the Pew Research Center. And if you notice here at the top, they have lots of different categories: politics, media, social trends, religion. So again, if you're looking for research or just something interesting, you'll see that they publish a lot of information. And don't be surprised, you often hear in the news media will use Pew Research to show what are people thinking right now. So guys, for example, as you know, in November, we've got the election coming up. So as you'll probably hear, they'll mention a lot of different research organizations trying to get people's interest. So here under politics, for example. Okay, well, let's return to the presentation. So guys, thanks for participating in that poll. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about our expression for the day. So what I wanted to do is choose an expression that seemed to be connected to our topic of thinking about social media. And especially since we're getting into the summertime, maybe you're thinking taking some time off, taking a break. So here's an expression I thought you all would be interested in. So the expression is to be off the grid. Sometimes we also say to go off the grid. Now, basically this means to live life without being connected to the internet. Now, keep in mind that you can take this expression in different ways. For example, if you want to say next week, I'm taking a vacation and I want to take a break from social media, you could say next week I'm going to be off the grid. Like I'm going to be away from the cell phone, away from the internet, and try to just, not participate in that. But of course, if you notice here, if you take it in an extreme way, So there is kind of an extreme interpretation, and that means to live life like completely without electricity or utilities. So in this case, if you live off the grid, that means you're not connected to anything. No internet, no phone, no electricity. So I don't know if anybody here wants to live completely off the grid. Would you want to live completely off the grid? Anybody? Anybody want to live in a
No.
cabin? No, Renata says no. Okay. You don't want to be a pioneer in the middle of the woods? No.
Nope, nope.
Nope, nope. Okay. Well, that's the extreme meaning. And I don't know about in your country, excuse me, but here in the United States, you actually do have a few people who are, you know, they're worried about the government. They don't want people to spy on them. So believe it or not, you have some people in the United States who live completely off the grid, who don't want to pay for electricity, who don't want to pay for utilities. So in this case, there are extreme interpretations. And if you notice, we said completely. Often you hear that, to be completely off the grid. Now, I found an interesting cartoon here. I like this one because I think anymore, most of us can agree, it's almost impossible not to be on social media or on the internet in some way. So for example, like if you type in my name, you might get, you know, some of my photo pages, or you might get Kenton ESL, you know, who knows? So I think it's interesting to think that it's almost impossible now to be away from social media, to not be found on the internet. So I found this pretty interesting little cartoon. It's called the Ungoogleable Man. And so notice the cartoon says, even the most powerful search engines cannot detect him. No Facebook page. Now, of course, MySpace, I don't know if you remember MySpace. MySpace kind of was before Facebook. So, but he says like, no Facebook, no MySpace, no nothing. And yet he walks amongst us. Now, before we get to our question of the day, do you have any family members who might be like this, who were completely ungoogleable, who may not have any social media, no connection to the internet at all?
My
Any
grandparents.
grandparents? So Kelly, your grandparents?
Just my
Yeah.
grandmother.
Just your grandmother. Okay.
My father.
Okay.
My father, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, my father too.
Okay. Well, it's funny because my wife's father, my father-in-law, he remarried a few years ago. His wife, his new wife, his current wife, has never been on the internet except email at work. She has no internet at home, no Wi-Fi, nothing. So I thought I can't believe it. That's impossible to believe. So anyway, in this case, I thought this was kind of a funny little cartoon. So I think at this point, everybody is Googleable, right? That's the opposite. So let's look at our question for the day. So I think most of us would agree it's probably not a good idea to go completely off the grid, right? We don't want, you know, to live like in the middle of the woods. But here's a question. Do you think it's a good idea to go a little off the grid once in a while? You know, no internet, no social media, none of those things for a little while. Again, vacation, for example, maybe even at home, maybe not to be so connected to the internet. So guys, what do you think? Tell me, you can use the chat box, you can use the microphone. What do you think? Is it a good idea to go off the grid for a little while? So once again, our expression of the day is to be off the grid or to go off the grid. And remember, most of the time, we're not talking about the extreme interpretation. We don't mean to live completely away from electricity or utilities, you know, to be like a crazy, you know, person living in the woods with a long beard, you know. In this case, I think we usually use it now just to be, maybe not to be on the internet so much, to be on social media or to be connected to the world. So in this case, it's good to be off the grid a little bit, maybe for a little while, maybe for a week, maybe for a short period of time. But I think I agree with everyone. It's pretty hard to be off the grid completely. I think we need to be connected somewhat, and that's pretty much how the world is. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to our grammar topic. So again, for the last part of our class here, we're going to go through some activities, and we'll see if we have enough time to do all of them. But again, for those of you who have not been here during the session, basically each week we talk about a tricky grammar topic, and then I post an activity for students to try. Now, in the activity, I also sometimes include informational videos, instructional videos, to help students work through some of the trickier aspects. So again, it's not really possible for me to talk about every tricky issue, but what I want to start with first is probably one of the trickiest, which is discussing what exactly is a noun. Often students do have trouble identifying what nouns are. So in the first activity in just a moment, we're all going to get a chance to share some ideas. But once again, let's talk about the 4 major parts of speech. So again, there are basically nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. And adverbs, for example, were the part of speech we talked about last week. But out of all of these 4 major parts of speech, nouns are by far the most common. Now, the problem is we don't know exactly how common, because part of the problem is how many words actually exist in English. And truthfully, nouns, you can create a noun out of anything. So believe it or not, you could, most of what you talk about could be nouns, or a lot of what you talk about, rather. But if you notice here, I gathered a couple of statistics. Some estimates place nouns at about 20% of the total words we use in common usage. So when you're speaking every day, about 20%. Now think about that. That's a pretty big number. But if you think about the total language, vocabulary, for example, some people think it's probably closer to 40% of the total number of words in the English language are nouns. So again, that's something to think about. Nouns are basically going to be the most common words that we use. So that brings us to our first question. What exactly is a noun? Well, let's go ahead and answer that, but then I want you guys to help participate. So for example, nouns are people, places, things, and ideas. So that gives us a place to kind of start with. Now, as you can see, those are some pretty big categories. Again, notice with people, places, for example, we have kind of your common people, common words we use with people. So for example, teacher and student, but then we also have proper names. So for example, when we mention, popular people or well-known people. If we mention, again, Donald Trump, for example. When we mention places, we have common places like school, right? The kitchen, that's a place. But then we also have formal names like the White House, for example. So again, nouns really are a very, very, very big category. So that's what I'd like to do first. So on the next screen, I have a little chart here. Okay, now the idea is we're going to think about how we can put some ideas in the people, places, things, and ideas category. So what I'd like to do first is I'm going to turn on the chat box here on my screen, and basically let's start with people. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to just kind of take about a minute or so. So using the chat box, let's start with the category of people. So everybody, I want you to share one example of what would be a person, a word that we would use for people. So like we said, teacher, for example, student, proper names. So everybody jump into the chat box there and give me an example. And what I'm going to do is put them here on the screen. Okay, so just keep typing. I'll put them on. Thanks, Mia. I feel very, very privileged. In fact, Mia, I'll put your name on there too. Okay, let's keep going, guys. Think, not just family members. What others? Okay. Sorry, Saba. I don't think Candy is a person, unless that's a person's name. Maybe we could use it as their name. Okay, kids. Okay. Don't forget professions. Yeah, there you go. Teacher, cook. Okay. President. Okay. All right. Okay, that looks like a good list. Okay, Rena, wow, getting really historical there. Lincoln, Saba, there you go, King. Okay, let's go to places. Okay, so in the chat box, let's continue with the idea of places. So let me type that in there for us. Okay, so I see house and home. Okay, that's both of those are good. Okay, I see garden, school, city, park, nation. Of course, Kelly's going to choose a place she wants to visit, right? Maybe she's already visited. Country, okay. Brazil, there you go, a little country pride there. Keep in mind in English we would use the Z there, Tassie. Restaurant. Okay. Kelly says she's been to Paris. I'm sure it's not Paris, Kentucky. Let's see. The beach. Okay, that's a good one. All right. All right. That looks good. Let's try things now. Okay, so let's try things now. All right, so right now it starts with computer. I like it. Okay. Okay, cup, pencil, bed, book. So I see cell phone, smartphones, okay. Flowers, okay. Okay, good, chair. Saba, you mean glasses? Okay. Car, that's a good one. Chopsticks, I like that. Okay, okay, we already mentioned bed, okay. Okay, we mentioned house. House would probably be a place, but I think it could be a thing too. Sofa, okay. Yeah, so for example, where does food belong? So food would be a thing. So for example, ice cream. Yeah, so food would open a huge category, wouldn't it? Okay. All right, now guys, I'm getting hungry, so let's not talk about food. All right, let's continue. So now here comes the more difficult one, I think, of the group, and that is ideas. Okay, let's try that one. Okay. All right, so Mie, that's our first problem. An idea, think, is not an idea. A thought might be an idea. Okay, so we mentioned the news. Okay. Okay, joy. A dream. Dream could be an idea. I think, there we go. Love, hope, that's good. Politics, maybe. Politics might be a thing. So we might put that. Honesty, that's a good one. Sadness, okay. Okay, love, yeah, we got love, okay. Kindness, okay. Now, Rena put information. I think information will be a thing, Rena. Yeah, so let's put, I think politics and information would probably be things. Brenda mentions truth. I like it. Okay. All right, guys. Kelly, maybe purity would be a noun. Pure would be an adjective. So you're in the right direction. But purity, and again, purity might be a thing too. So as you can see, ideas are hard. Ideas are really hard. So as you can see, that's a pretty difficult topic. Okay. Well, anyway, you guys did a great job. That's a great list we have here on the screen. Now, as you can see, nouns are a huge category, and even then, we've only just begun to think about how nouns function. So that was really our first test. Could we identify nouns? Now, don't forget, nouns also include pronouns. So, for example, if I go back to people for just a moment, if I said I, you, he, she, these would also be examples, but they would probably fit more in the category of pronoun. But believe it or not, a pronoun is still grammatically a noun, but it doesn't function exactly the same way. So again, that's where things get kind of tricky, I think. Okay, well, that's a great list you guys put together there. And I'm going to clear the screen, but again, don't worry, we are recording this, so you can go back and watch it later. All right, so let's go on to tricky issue number 1. So one of the issues that students have is focusing on how nouns are counted or if they're not counted. So again, we have countable or uncountable. Sometimes we refer to them as non-countable as well. So countable nouns are those things that can be counted and pluralized. They can be singular as one of something, or they can be plural. Uncountable nouns, on the other hand, or non-countable or non-count nouns, are those that cannot be counted or pluralized. So grammatically, they are treated as singular words. Now, one of the first problems for students is trying to identify, could I make a word plural or not? Is this word going to be grammatically singular or not? So let's do a quick activity to kind of explore a few of the tricky issues with this area. Okay, so guys, look at the screen. Okay. So what I'm going to do is ask different people to read the sentence, and you're going to choose which one is the correct answer. So take a look at it real quickly. I'll give you about a minute just to look at the screen. Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do is just ask different people to read the sentence, and they're going to choose the answer for us. So Brenda, would you like to try number 1 there and tell us which one you would choose?
Okay, I choose. Okay, I read the.
Yeah, read the whole sentence, but choose the answer. So as you read it, okay?
Much of the equipment in our office needs updating.
Very good. So for example, the word equipment is non-countable or uncountable. Now, one of the problems for students is that often they mistake the word equipment for actual things like computers, for example. A computer is a countable thing. We can count it. But equipment is actually a category. So in this case, the word equipment is non-countable or uncountable. Now, one of the first things we'll recognize is that oftentimes we use these specific words like much and many, and we'll see a couple of others here in just a moment. Last week we talked about adverbs, and we looked at some tricky things about adverbs. Well, words like much and many are often referred to as adverbs of quantity. So again, we didn't talk about these because I wanted to talk about adverbs of quantity in this topic, because adverbs of quantity are frequently discussing nouns. Are they countable or uncountable? So in this case, this particular quantity, much, which again can function as an adjective as well, is referring to the fact that this is a non-count or uncountable word. All right, let's try number 2. So Mie, would you like to try number 2 for us?
Yes. They say little knowledge is a good thing.
Okay, so I got bad news for you, Mie.
A little?
A little, yes. Now here's the problem. The problem is with these two particular words, a little and little, they actually have a different meaning. So Mie, what do you think the meaning of a little means?
A little. Oh, I don't know.
Well, I'll give you a hint. Which one of these is maybe more positive? A little or little?
A little.
Yeah, so that's really the first thing you need to think about. When I use the word a little, now be careful, everybody. This is a positive word, but it's not like super positive. So again, the problem is the word little. If I just use the word little without this part, then what you're doing is you're saying this person does not know much of anything. So if I said, for example, little knowledge, like this person has little knowledge of the topic, that means they really don't know anything. So in this case, when I use the word little, you're kind of focusing as a negative use. So in this case, that's what you're saying is, I know little about this. Like, don't talk to me. I am not an expert. Now, if you say I know a little, like, so for example, Mia, if I said, could you teach me a little of your language? In this case, I'm asking you to give me something positive, you know? But in this case, if you said, Mr. John, I know little about teaching, then you're telling me, don't talk to me. I don't know anything. So in this case, little is kind of using it in a negative way. So I think in this case, we want to say a little, because if you notice, Mia, it says a little knowledge is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good try. All right. Let's continue. So how about Saba? Would you like to try number 3?
Okay. Max gave the police a lot of information about his brother, the criminal.
Very good. Okay, I think you cut out there a little bit at the end. But yes, again, the word information is uncountable. So again, information is not something we can pluralize. Now, if I talk about specific pieces of information, that would be different. So if I told you, this particular thing happened. But again, the word information is a very big category. Now, again, if you notice, before the word information, we use many different kinds of adverbs to modify. So for example, a lot of something, in this case, can be used with countable or uncountable things. But in this case, because information is not a plural word, we can use this expression, a lot of. Okay, so that's very possible. Okay, let's continue. So let's see, Dulce, how about number 4?
She is doing a great job.
Very good. Now, believe it or not, this is another tricky area for students because the word job can be used in a countable way or an uncountable way. So for example, if I mention the word jobs, jobs would be talking about actual specific jobs. For example, maybe around your house, you have lots of little jobs to do. I have to clean the kitchen, I have to do this, or I have to cook, or again, maybe if we think about the jobs in the United States or the jobs in your country. Do people have good jobs, bad jobs? Are there a lot of jobs or not? But if you notice in this case, we see the word a great job. Well, when we say a great of something, we're actually saying that this person is doing good work. So in this case, the word job, a great job, we generally are using it in a way that we don't necessarily mean to pluralize. So when we see the word great, yeah. Now, of course, some of you might know when someone says great job, you know, when someone says that, that's how they're using it, like good work, great work. Okay. So in this case, these two words actually have two different meanings. All right. All right. Let's look at the last one. Kelly, would you like to try number 5?
Sure. Students in the U.S. must take a lot of math in school.
Okay. Very good. Now, the reason I chose this one is because this is one difference between American English and British English. For example, in British English, they often do pluralize the word math, talking about different classes of math. So often they say maths. But if you'll notice, we do not say that in the United States. So in this case, the word math would be referring to the topic. So in this case, we would be using it in a non-countable way. Now, if you want to pluralize math, you would not say maths, you would say math classes. Classes would be the word that you would pluralize, not the word math. So again, this is one difference between British English and American English. And again, I know some of you may have studied British English before. So again, looking at all of our choices here, this kind of highlights some of the confusing things that we often have when it comes to countable or uncountable. Okay, I think we have time, hopefully, to get to the next 2 topics, but let's see how fast we can go. All right, so the next topic is talking about verbals. Now, some of you might remember this was a topic we talked about a few weeks ago. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it back is because I noticed a few of us still had a couple of problems with verbals, and especially when thinking about how to use verbals as nouns. So if you remember, there are two verbals that we use as nouns. Gerunds, and again, gerunds are those words that end in ing, but they are grammatically a noun. And then infinitives are phrasal nouns where we're using the word to. So for example, to walk would be, again, grammatically a noun, depending on how we use it. Now, in general, the problem for Miss students is how to use them correctly. And if you remember, we said a few weeks ago, really a lot of it is memorization. Okay, that's really the challenge here. So for example, we're going to talk about these 2 ideas. Let's look at some activities. Okay, so for example, I'm going to ask different students just to go through these quickly. So Rena, how about number 1? Tell us which answer you would choose. And again, notice we have lots of different choices here. So
I think D, paying and to pay is, both of them are okay.
Yes, you are correct. And that's because the word like, when we use the word like, we can use either the gerund, paying, or we can use the infinitive. So in this case, letter C would not be correct. Okay? So again, the key word is the word like. When I use the word like, I can use a gerund or an infinitive. Okay, let's go on to the next one. All right, so let's see. Renata, would you like to try number 2?
I'd like to go swimming this afternoon.
Okay, you are correct. When we use the word would like is using the infinitive only. So we don't say I'd like going or I'd like go. We only use the infinitive when we use would like. So I would like to do something. Okay, so excellent. So again, that's a situation where we just have to know the answer. All right, let's do number 3. Tasi, would you like to try number 3?
It was too late to go out for dinner.
Okay, very good. Now, actually, this was mentioned last week. So in this case, we're using the word to go as an adverb. And the question here is, what is it doing? Well, it's explaining something. If you remember last week, we said that sometimes we use infinitives to explain the word why. So in this case, it's giving us a reason or a purpose. So why was the person, or what was the reason? What was the situation? So in this case, it's modifying the word late. It was too late to do what? For what reason? So in this case, it's explaining a particular situation. So often when we use the it expressions, so anytime you see that it was too late, it was important, we often use to do something in this case. So in this case, it was too late to do something. What was it was too late to do? So it's modifying, it's actually explaining what was too late, or in this case, I think what, not why. Yeah, sorry. Okay, we're almost there. All right, let's try the next one. All right, so Julie, I don't know if you're available. You want to try number 4?
Okay. She's thinking of having a party on Saturday. Yes, I don't know.
Yeah, you are correct. Yeah, so you are correct. So again, we mentioned a couple weeks ago with prepositions. So when we use a preposition like of, if you remember a few weeks ago, we said when we use prepositions, we always follow them with gerunds, not infinitives. So if you're thinking of doing something. So in this case, she's thinking of having. Okay. All right. Good answer. All right. Let's see. Brenda, would you like to try number 5?
Okay. We don't mind to do this washing up.
Okay. Guess again.
We don't mind to. Okay. We don't mind doing the washing up.
Very good. And the reason it is the gerund is because the expression don't mind, in this case, we always follow it with the gerund. So this is one of those expressions that always use gerunds. So you don't mind. I don't mind doing this. I don't mind doing this. So in this case, only the first one would be correct. Okay. All right. Okay, now our final topic, which again, our time is just about up here, so we might go just a couple of minutes long, articles. Now, I know for everybody in this group, I am sure, has difficulty using articles in English. Whether it's because in your language you don't use articles at all, so some languages don't use articles, others use articles in different ways. For example, our Spanish and Portuguese speakers, we often use articles to reflect masculine, feminine, plural, singular. But in English, we don't have those considerations. So we have only 2 different articles. We have the definite article, which is the word the, and then we have what are called indefinite articles, which are and. Now again, I'm not going to explain them right now, so that's what we're going to do partly in the activity this week. But let's see how well we do, because one of the challenges for students, this is really my opinion, and I think this is true, everyone would agree, is how to use the articles and of course when to use them. So that's part of the problem. And I think even more difficult is when not to use them. Because oftentimes you notice, even though we use articles a lot in English, there are times when we don't use them. Okay, so before we finish up here this morning, let's do just a short activity to discuss these challenges. Okay, now everybody, let's take a look at number 1. What I'm going to do is read the sentence, and somebody can just use the microphone to tell me what they think the answer is. So for number 1, can I pay by blank check? So what I say, can I pay by a check, the check, or no article? So is it A, B, or C? Who wants to tell me?
See?
C.
Congratulations. So in this case, we don't use an article. Okay, I don't know right now. Our connection may be a little bad. All right, let's try number 2. Have you got blank car fixed yet? So would I say a car, the car, or no?
B.
B.
Okay, so I hear A, I hear B. Yeah, I hear more B's though, and the answer is B. Yeah, so in this case, the car, because it's talking about a specific car, your car probably. So in this case, the car would be the correct answer. All right, let's look at number 3. Now we got 2 parts. So the first part, would I say a children, the children, or no article are a wonderful audience?
C.
Okay.
C.
Yeah, actually the answer is no. I think someone's having a connection issue. Okay, so in this case, we would use no article because again, children in general. So we're referring to the general idea of children. Okay, let's look at the second part of the sentence.
B.
B.
But not, okay,
B.
the children, yes. In this case, now we're referring to a specific group of children. So these children in that particular group. Okay, all right, guys, we're almost there. I have just a couple more on the next screen. Okay, here's the next one, Pacific Ocean. So would I use the, nothing, or the?
Nothing.
Okay, so I hear nothing. Okay.
D.
Nothing.
Well, here's the first problem. We do use an article, Dulce. So it's either going to be A or C. So it's not going to be B. Let's continue. So I have largest body of water.
A.
D.
D.
So nothing or the?
D.
D.
Yeah, okay. So as you can see, as we look at all of them, the answer is actually A. The Pacific Ocean is the largest body of water on Earth. In this case, we do not use an article for the word Earth. Now you might say, why not the Earth, Mr. John? Well, I hate to tell you this, there's only one right now, right? There's only one. So now if I say of all the people on the Earth, then that becomes a different story. But in Earth in general, we don't need it. Okay. All right, let's look at the last one. I'm afraid blank answer is no. Come back when you can make blank new proposal.
D.
B.
B.
Yeah, in this case, the answer is B. So the answer is no, but you can make a new, there's the key there, a new proposal. So proposal would be a singular idea, but new is the key word there, a new proposal. Okay, now as you can see, these are just a few of the issues that students face when it comes to articles. Sometimes we use articles, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we use the, sometimes we use a. I think you can see this can be very confusing. And let me tell you something, as a teacher, teaching lots of these different topics, I'll be honest, articles for me are one of the absolute hardest to teach, simply because so many different languages use articles in different ways that it is really hard to communicate. And honestly, for my Spanish-speaking students, I make the same mistakes in Spanish. Because in Spanish, we have certain times we use articles and certain times we don't. And boy, I really have trouble using articles in Spanish. So as you can see, this is a problem for a lot of people. Okay, well guys, so what I would like to say is we're gonna do one more activity for this session. And right now the adverb activity is active in the Google Classroom. So we're going to do one more activity for the summer, and that is a tricky grammar for nouns. So I will have it posted in the Google Classroom. It's probably going to take me a couple of days to get it ready. So I'm going to post it on Friday, July 3rd, and I will keep it available until Friday, July 10th. In case you do have time to do it. So it's going to take me a couple of days to put it together. The adverb activity is still active. So that's not finished until Monday. So if you have time, you can do the adverb activity until then. Okay, well guys, our final chat for the summer session is next week, July 8th. So I hope most of you are able to join us. I realize we're in the summertime now and maybe some people are taking vacations, but I hope you can join us next week. And then finally, don't forget our final TOEFL workshop, listening skills, is going to take place tomorrow. So again, I'm offering two, one in the morning at 10 and one again at 7. So if you can join us, that would be great. Okay, guys.